of you have heard of gap year, Dominique is about to completely reframe what you think about that. So we'll let her do all of that talking. But today our podcast is really touching on creating value. And Dominique founded PizArts and Dance Gap Year and really mastered creating value for that because it is so unique and it's so out of the norm from the standard creative academic experience, creative process, making creative works of art, even regular academic experience, regular gap years, and business models traditionally and what we think of them. So we're going to hear all about that. So before we get started with our interview, I'm going to let Dominique explain how Dance Gap Year got started, and Kat and I are going to sit back and listen with you guys while she tells us her story, and then Kat and I are going to jump back in with some questions. So.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Madi, thank you, Kat, for having me. This is super exciting. I love sharing the story about Dance Gap Year and my company PizArts in general. I started in 2014. I created PizArts, and it was originally a space that I had in Harlem, and my focus has always been on cultural exchange, really supporting people who travel to other countries who want to focus in dance. We would teach classes, we'd have international students who were studying here teach class, say hip-hop in Japanese or contemporary in Italian, like in their actual native language. For me, before I actually started the company, I lived in Argentina for a year and a half, and one of the greatest experiences I ever had was learning Spanish through my dance experience. And later on I found out that I did my own in dance education. And when I was going through the process of writing my thesis, I met someone who asked me if the curriculum I was creating was meant for a gap year. And I didn't know at the time what a gap year program was, so I started doing some research on it, and I found out, wait, there is no such thing. So after going down the rabbit hole of research in gap year, I found out that it's actually a pretty big thing in the US, and that there was a whole association, the Gap Year Association. So I started to go to their conferences, I joined their committees, and yeah, we started our first program in 2018. We did 3 months in New York, 3 months in Argentina, and since then we've had programs in Japan, in Costa Rica, in Jamaica. And what makes it so cool is that we don't design the program until we have the people. And based on the backgrounds of the people who are interested in the program, their experiences, their needs, we then design a program that's tailored to them. So that's ultimately what makes it very unique and different from if you were doing a college program or conservatory. But yeah, that's history.
Awesome. Well, that's quite an experience, and none of that sounds traditional to me. Before Dominique started PizArts, before she started Dance Gap Year, I had never heard of such a model. So I don't think anybody else who's been involved with the program has either. I think everyone comes to you and it's their first time hearing about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, I think a lot of people might ask why you versus someone else that might be more traditional or something we're more used to or more comfortable with. How do you create value when you've set up something that's so unique and so different from anything else that exists, business-wise and arts-wise?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying about we don't have like a model where it's like, it's not cookie cutter. So, traditionally if you go to school, you have semesters, these classes run every year just like this, and you just have different students in there. With the Gap Year program, it was, well, first of all, the philosophy of Gap Year is to create a space where people can have this experience, rite of passage, right? They're like trying to find themselves, their adulthood, things like that. It's typically for students who graduated from high school and are going to take a year off before they go to college, or maybe after college and they take a year off before they go into the workforce. So when we decide that we're going to create a curriculum, again, we go through this whole process of learning who they are, recommendation letters, their background. one of the things that I do differently than other application processes, because we don't just accept anybody, and it's a long process, interviews, all of that good stuff, is that I don't create any limitations to what they send me. So if it's a recommendation letter, for example, it doesn't have to be from a professional, like a teacher of theirs. I'm like, you give me a recommendation letter from anybody that you would like to speak on your behalf, right? Because our whole thing is we want to get to know who you are. We don't want to have a version of what you think you're supposed to be to get into this program, right? The other thing is when they send their videos, I always get the same question. Do I need to, does it have to be choreography? Do I need to be doing certain positions? I'm like, nope, you can talk in your video, you can dance in your video, you can send whatever creative concept you want. And what I found is that when you give people the freedom to do that, you get a true sense of who they are, and then that's how we can make an authentic curriculum based on what they're interested in. Also, so aside from dance, they have to study other things, and we put them together and teach them. How does dance help you in other fields, and how do these fields also help you in dance?
I'm so sorry, I'm recording.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We're all in a public space.
Yeah.
In Bryant Park in New York, and Kat, you are.
I'm in the DMV area, Washington, D.C.
But you're outside somewhere really pretty.
I am outside in the pergola garden thing, so it's nice.
Yeah, that was a little plug there. You got to improvise. But so, going back to what you were just saying, Dominique, why was it so important for you to create? I mean, to me, what you've created is an alternative to the regular structure, even how they apply, how they can get in. Most of the time when we're applying for anything, it's a really rigid process. It's very stressful. There are a lot of limitations. There's not as much freedom as what you've designed. Why was it so important for you to set up such an alternative process, for lack of better words, and kind of get away from the more traditional model, the rigid, the highly competitive? Although you're selective, it's not the same type of competitiveness. Why was it important to you to set it up?
There was two reasons. The first was that I started dancing at 16, so I was a late bloomer. Most kids start at 3, 4, 5, and my experience, I knew I wanted to dance. I was so hungry to do that. I studied in college. I went to LA. I was signed to MSA. I did commercial work. I traveled with different companies, all of these things. But I remember how terrified I was asking questions. I was afraid to ask people what I needed to do to get further in my career. And that always stuck with me, and I hated that because I'm not a shy person. But when it came to dance, I was so sensitive about that because it meant everything to me. And I wanted to create a space where people people know they don't have to be afraid to ask questions. That's what they're supposed to do. And the second one is that we as dancers tend to identify our entire existence based on our ability to dance. So there's a real challenge with separating yourself from who you are at your dance and your person. And so we wanted to create a space where people could learn and experience something and understand that you are a person and then you have your dance. But if you decide to walk away from dance, it doesn't leave you, it's still a part of you. And that tends to happen. If dancers don't get into a certain program, they'll quit. They think that's it, it's over. And it's a very painful process. So we wanted to create this alternative where people knew that it wasn't, you don't just have to abruptly end and lose a piece of yourself. It can still be a part of who you are.
That's beautiful. And as you're talking about dancing, the music comes on in the background on the street. Right on cue.
I know, it was right on cue.
I think you put.
Can you still hear us okay, Kat?
Yeah, it's pretty loud.
It's pretty loud, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me see if I can improv, man. You gotta adjust life.
and I can speak louder. I'll project.
Wait, is it a passing car or did
No,
someone
it's
set
a
up?
live concert.
No
All right,
way.
let me just flip this around. This is what you're seeing.
Oh, that's perfect. I mean, it sounds a lot better now. It's less. It's yeah.
All right, but we're gonna do our best here because we've already,
It's cool.
Yeah. No, I was gonna.
This is an example of like one of the biggest things with younger people or like people who are coming through this experience is like you have to teach people to accept that there'll be obstacles, challenges, things that you don't expect, and you can't crumble, you can't fall apart. You have to find a way to basically accept it, and how can you find a solution so you can continue doing what you're doing.
Right. And that's why I like your model in that you customize everything towards your students, your clients. I think that puts a lot of value into what they're getting, because no other company is going to be as specific and as detailed into getting to know you as an individual and make sure that you have the experience that you need going forward. Like, I have not met a company that really does that and tailors everything to you. So that is really the whole point of this segment, where we're talking about creating value for the client, making sure that we are doing everything we can. And your company literally is the epitome of that. You guys do that.
Yeah, and that's also another that I always have to reiterate to them is you're not being graded. This isn't a grade. This is an experience you're having. You're a spiritual being having a human experience, and everything around us. We tend to forget that everything was built on a single idea and a lot of work and trials and tribulations, but the things around us, somebody had to think of it, and somebody had to put one piece on top of the other to make it, right? And I feel like also like just in general, gap year, like the gap year concept, gap year association, we work really hard to keep a strong relationship with the higher education institutions, higher education associations, and also like conservatories, right? It's not choosing one over the other, but a lot of kids, like, you're 17, you go into school or you leave your house and you're trying to, you have to move somewhere, you have to start auditioning, and nobody's taught you anything about financial literacy. Nobody has taught you about like how to find the right roommates, your day-to-day time management, things like that. It's like there's no grade on that in life, right? It's like you either understand it to how it works for you or you don't, right? And then you don't get as much out of your experiences. So we focus on teaching them those things so that if they decide they want to go into conservatory or higher education, that they're more prepared to do so. They have more confidence, they're clear of their intentions, they know how to speak up, they're confident in the work that they're presenting and how they articulate that. That's what we focus on.
And can I ask, how has your company changed since inception to the present? Like, have you seen a lot of changes? Have you adapted to new things? And COVID, of course. How has COVID affected you?
Yeah. Yes. So in the very beginning, I thought that I really wanted to have a program where it was like we had a group of people and that was the motto. We take at least 10 people per program. The first year that we did it, my first semester, I had one student. And I was terrified of the idea that I only had one student. But truth be told, it was the best experience because that's why she came to the program. It was because she was looking for real personal mentorship. And that's when I realized the value of what I had, that I can't lose. We can't lose, because in college that's lacking. You don't have somebody there to be a personal mentor to you. In conservatory, it's a lot about your physical abilities and the focus on your artistry and not the whole person. The second semester we had 2 dancers, and then that was really hard because I started to find myself going back into like a structure, a normal conservative structure, and it was crazy. because again, it's tailored to the person. So I have one person who wants to be in experimental dance and the other who wants to be commercial hip hop. So they clearly can't be studying the same classes. They clearly can't be in the same program. They have different, objectives in their life. So that was hard. So we took a year off, and I really sat with like how am I going to make this work, right? So instead of having like a scheduled program, we decided to open it up at any time. As long as you give me 3 months, then we can set up a program for you. And that allowed us to go back to the authenticity of how, our vision of this program in general. My program's always been based on international exchange, so we do a lot of traveling. When COVID happened, that shut down everything, right? I had a group from the UK that was coming. They couldn't, it was just a whole thing. But I live in the Bronx, and we have a 3,000 square foot space. So during that time, we decided that we were going to clear out the space and we were going to turn it into a residency. Because even though the pandemic was happening, people still kept writing me like, can we do a gap year? Are you gonna have a program? I'm like, where do you want me to put you, in a tree? Like, you can't go anywhere. But their insistence on having an experience during that, I was like, okay, let me take this seriously, right? I have a 17-year-old girl in Missouri who's like, Dominique, are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it? And I'm like, okay, I think I need to do it. Like, the demand is from them, and that's why, like, again, for me, I've realized at this point, 7 years in, I cannot lose. We can't. It's impossible, because we always go towards the needs of the people who come to us. We don't impose our ideas and concepts onto them.
That, I'm just going to stop you for a second. That is the essence of creating value, I think. What do you think, Kat? I feel like that literally sums it up right there. You've created so much value that the demand is greater than your supply. Mm-hmm. Even during a pandemic. It doesn't get any better than that. That is creating value.
Yeah, and now we have the residency in the Bronx, and we piloted it last semester with 4 girls, or 5 girls, and it was great. It was a different experience, and now I've realized that, having the space, letting them live together, they dance in the studio. We have monitors in all of the studios. They have classes with teachers all over the world. 17 teachers in Africa, Asia, South America, all over the US. And that's its own experience, just being able to recognize the human side of who we are, and that our common interest is what brings us together.
I love your business model. Your company is amazing. And I'm definitely going to see if my own daughter would be interested in that when she's going to college in 5 years.
Nice.
So that would be awesome. And I did have a question. Like, where do you see yourself in another 5 years from now with your company?
So my goal is to have more partnerships globally. So we're part of the United Nations International Dance Council, and with the Gap Year Association, we work a lot with so there's other Gap Year programs, but nobody does dance. So I've been building partnerships with people who already have Gap Year programs in different places, and finding ways to implement dance into the program that they already have, so that I can have students, they can do 3 months in New York, 3 months in LA, and 2 to 3 months abroad. So that's our goal, is to get students to do at least 9 months, and they have the experience of being East Coast, West Coast, and abroad. Yeah.
And how are you going to ensure like that closeness to the customer, to quality control? If you're growing and getting bigger, how are you going to ensure that the quality isn't lost as you grow?
Yeah, I just had a 2-hour meeting yesterday about it. I'm on the committee for fair trade learning, and that's one of the things that we talk about. So we create all the standards for what makes a valued program and what's needed for the students having the experience, but also for the people in which the community they're going to be in, how to be respectful to their culture, and have a really good partnership. So that's one of the reasons why it was so important for me to be a part of the Gap Year Association and be truly immersed in understanding the standard accreditation for that, the philosophies, what's required safety wise, as long I will never ever be running programs and not be a part of the Gap Year Association. And that's also another reason what separates, because in the dance world they've been talking a lot about gap year. I'm like, but nobody in the dance world knows what a gap year is. Like having a kid go to a studio, right? Not a gap year, right? So yeah, that's my goal, to just keep building within the Gap Year Association.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you work really closely with your staff, right? And they're all trained, they're all doing the same, they're basically copies of you, right? They're all trained, they're basically copies of you, right?
Definitely not copies of me. I'm a pretty lax boss. I have this ideology of you do you. If you're in my circle, I already have all the confidence in the world of your experiences and what you can give to people. One of the things that since we first started, done a program in the past, they come back as artist mentors. They work with them because they've had experience of doing it, and it's actually that they want to come back and be able to give the experience to somebody else, not that they had it and they learned okay, I see this in a different way.
And that means everything, right? As a business owner, your whole business is giving, and you see that through these people coming back to you and spreading the love, basically. So it's amazing. I commend you for all of that. And spreading the love, basically.
Yeah,
so it's amazing. I commend you for all of that.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. And also, one of the other things too that tends to happen in the dance world is there becomes a sense of ownership. And a part of it I understand, age, and then they go off to a larger, more recognized conservatory or something, and then it's they were trained there. No, they were trained somewhere else first. And so that creates some friction in the relationships with students and their teachers. For me, it was we don't own anybody. Dance is to build a community, and our community is dance. So when my students, they have all of these teachers, I'm constantly encouraging them, reach out to them. That's it. They're your mentor. They're here for you. I'm not the end all for stuff. I only know what I know, and this is why we have other people. So go to them. You never know. In the future, you may end up working with them. You may audition for something and see them, right? I don't own you. I don't own your work. There's no ownership here. This is, again, an experience that we're having, and how can we keep building on this and building our community as artists.
That's awesome. Can you hear me? Sorry, my earpiece went out.
Well, we're actually on public Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we're good. I'm so happy to have learned so much about Pitchworks right now. It's an incredible program, and I wish that I was able to go back in time and go. Yeah, we're good. I learned a lot myself as a student, and right now it's an incredible program. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to having my daughter look into it. I want to ask if you have bumped into any issues that you found with setting the program up for students prior to COVID, internationally. Were there any issues that you saw in this business plan or anything like that, and how did you overcome them?
students prior to COVID, internationally? Were there any issues that you saw in the business plan or anything like that? And how did you overcome them?
I haven't so far had too many issues when it came to students international. I mean, like, wherever you go in the country, you really have to know where you're going. I would never have a program in a place that I haven't actually gone there first. So you know the ins and outs of, safety, how to get money, all of these things. I will say, so one of the challenges I have had, like, the biggest learning lesson I had recently was that when I had to do something, it's like, this is what you need to know about the industry, this is how it is. I was projecting, like, what I know of being in the field, and it wasn't healthy for that, right? I realized I had to, like, step back and find a new approach to how I'm sharing that information with them, how I'm talking to them. And I'm super grateful because we had a lot of communication between us, and they really laid it on me, Dom, it's not what you're saying, it's how you say it. I'm like, how? You're just too soft, like that's enough. Nobody cares in the industry, like, they will leave you, okay? They won't even think about you. But the reality is that the type of people that come to this program, if they wanted to be in the industry, they would be in the industry. If they wanted to be in college, they would be in college. They come to us because they're trying to figure it out. And I realize that I have to shift the way I think about it. And
so it's like you have the foundation and everything built out, and then you grow it by communicating with everybody and making sure that lines are open, and that's when you get your ideas and stuff. I think that's beautiful because that's also a huge value,
and everything built out, and
letting the customers know that you're there for them. You want to hear what their needs are, what their wants are, what they have found out, and the fact that they're coming to you so freely says so much because they feel comfortable in that space, They're like, okay, Dominique's gonna listen to us, if we say this, then she'll implement that, and change this, and it's just a beautiful model there.
It's like I want to give them the best experience, but I too am human and I'm constantly learning. And but once we get out of it and we step back, that's the part I really love too, is that you realize how much an impact will make on your life. It doesn't matter if you're 17 or 27, right? Everybody's experiences can teach another person, right? And that's another thing that I love about it is we don't put it, we don't think about age, we don't think about physical things. It's like, this is a technique. This is about you understanding your artistry and your voice and what you're trying to say. Okay? And that's what I constantly reiterate. And I realize now that, what does anybody say in the real world, when the students said, you're always saying in the real world. And I stopped and I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I will never say that again. This is the real world. We are living in the real world right now, having this experience. And she taught me a lesson, of like, we say things because we've heard it so much, and then we just, we are copies.
That is a good point, actually, in general, for anything. Make sure that you stay present and aware of what's happening. Yeah, so beautiful all around.
This is a good point, actually, in general, right? Make sure that you stay present and aware of what's happening. Yeah, so beautiful all around.
Pat, if you don't have any more questions, I have one more.
Yes, please.
All right, so my last question is actually for anybody watching this, who's going to watch later right now, and even for myself. You're listening to unique, you learn very unique experiences. I think there are some things that are just not reinventable. There's some things that are always universal.
write stuff down,
Beautiful.
and learn really, really, really honor people. And if you honor people, you will have success.
Those are mega life lessons. Like mega life lessons outside of that applies to community.
So Dominique, if anybody wants to learn about your program, where should they go?
So Dominique, if anybody wants to learn about your program, where should they go?
So you can go to our website. It's PIZARTS. And there you can find all the different programs, things that we do. But there you can find the tab for Dance Gap Year. If you specifically want to do a Gap Year program, you can also Google Dance Gap Year and it has its own website. We're also on Instagram and we have at Dance Gap Year.
We'll have current handles and our handles as usual, but we'll also have current handles in our LinkedIn posts and also in our Instagram posts. If you guys want to go check those out, and then we'll also
Yeah, I love it. I loved hearing about everything, and I'm so glad you joined us, Dominique.
discussion and kind of learn some things.
Great thing, and I'm so glad you joined us.
Yeah, it's the same. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I think these things make her people. It's not just you can share. We don't want to do. It's good to do this. And it's great that it's it's a female discussion. When I started this, just for those of you who don't know, we decided to eventually start expanding on what we call our GPAC, our women's GPAC, and we're happy that Dominique is the first edition, and we're going to be bringing in more people. So to all the ladies, keep getting your bags, keep empowering yourselves, and we hope that anything that's
Awesome.
all of our
Thank you.
including this one, will
Thank you, Dominique.
empower you, and also push you and teach you to get yourself to the next level, and we are here for you. This is GPAC.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dominique.
Tune in next week. We'll
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Speaker,